This follows very nice our sequence of topics today, where Irakli and Marina talked about data collection and how data is being recorded. Natalia talked about mapping out the data and hotspot mapping. Ezra talked about analyzing the data, and now we're sort of bringing it home, and we're talking about how to visualize the data so you can best communicate the data. So it's an all data day. Okay, so we're going to do a warm-up activity just to get you started thinking about data visualizations. We've all seen good visualizations and bad visualizations. So please, everybody stand up. I promise we are not doing an energizer, but you will get a little exercise. So when you see the visualization, if you think it's a good visualization, if it's good, stand up, stay standing. If you look at it and you think this is not good, it's confusing, sit down. For people who've seen this presentation, I have new visualizations. Okay, so good, stand up. Not good, sit down. This one. Okay. Everybody sat down. Does somebody want to say why you think this is not good?
Да. Тут очень много цифр, и нам не видно и непонятно.
Too many figures, and you cannot see the proportion.
Too many variables.
Too many figures, and the proportion is not clear.
This one. This is childhood TB notification, and you have Moldova, Uzbekistan, Ukraine, and Tajikistan. Okay. Okay, Sergey, why?
As for me, I can see, о чем написано. В принципе, слишком мелкий текст.
First of all, the text letters are too small, and it's not clear what it is. For perception, is not the best option.
Okay. Yeah. Good point.
И да, не хватает.
Is it absolute numbers, you asked?
Показателя.
Some indications lack.
Some people are still standing. Why do some people think it's good?
For me, it's not very good. It's something middle, because it's some information we can visualize here, but it's not the final or some comparable information with one big data. For example, general in European region, and after for some countries to compare with something, not only country with the country, from some general data also, to understand trend for the region. And also because in the region there is other countries also, but here is only 3 countries, if you will think like this.
I agree. Yeah, period of time. This is all really good. Personally, I think, yes, you could improve it by the period of time. You could have one showing what is childhood TB notification in the region, so you have a comparison. I don't like these lines. I think they're unnecessary, and it just adds more information that is unnecessary. But you could have here the numbers, for example, bigger, larger letters. So yeah, there are lots of ways you can improve this. What about this one? This is Armenia's population pyramid. Is this good? A good visualization or a bad one? Okay, it looks like there's consensus that this is good. I think this is actually an excellent visualization. The point of visualizations is to tell a story. And I think it tells a really interesting story. You get a lot of information from this one graphic. What about this one? This is showing sales of apples, bananas, oranges, and lemons. Niet, okay. I agree, this is horrible. You should never have a visualization where you're blocking your data. That's bad practice. Hello? Okay. Okay, so why do we visualize data? So I'm thankful to Natalia that she showed this map of from John Snow that was taken in 1854, the cholera outbreak in London, because when he did this heat mapping that Natalia presented earlier, this is one of our first examples of data visualization and use. He took this map to the government and showed them that his theory was he thought that it didn't have to do with bad air or miasma, which is what people thought was causing the cholera. And he said, I don't think so. I think it has something to do with the water, and I'm going to prove it. So he created this map, and then he showed that all this clustering of cholera cases by the water pump on Broad Street. And he said, let's remove the handle of the pump and see if the cholera cases go down. And the government said, okay, we'll try it. And it worked. I mean, there were other things they did, but that was, they believed that that was the start of the end of the cholera epidemic. And it was because he brought his data visualization and communicated his data to the policymakers. So why do we visualize data? It helps us understand really complex patterns in data that can't be easily perceived by other means of communication. It also helps us understand data faster and quicker because we're able to process pictures faster than we're able to process words. Our brains can understand it quicker. So I'm going to give you an example. There was a study that came out looking at how COVID-19 affected life expectancy among different racial groups in the United States. And they found that the Black and Latino populations in America were affected 3 to 4 times more than the white population. Okay, COVID-19 reduced the life expectancy of African Americans and Latinos more than the whites. So this paper came out, okay? Don't read this, by the way. I just want to illustrate. This is where they explained what happened. That's a lot of words, right? That's going to take a long time to read, okay? Then they put it in a table and they described their findings in a table, which is better, right? Then they visualized it. And you can see here, if you look here, you can see very easily. So this is life expectancy at birth. So this is without COVID, the life expectancy of an African American person in the United States was about 75 years. With COVID, it was reduced to about 73 years. Okay, so that's what the different circles mean. Do you see how the difference, this is the difference with whites, Latinos, and Blacks. Do you see how really quickly your brain was able to process that information and understand it so much quicker than that long paragraph of all the text? That's the beauty of data visualization. So selecting visualizations, Ezra kind of touched on this before a little bit, but there are three main steps. One is you determine if you even need a visualization. So let's say you have a report and you say 90% of the TB workforce is women. Okay, 9 out of 10 people in the TB workforce in whatever country are women. Do you need a visualization for that? No, I don't think this is what your visualization would look like. And I don't think that's really necessary. It's not a complex pattern. It's not complex data. You're not, necessarily telling a story or making an argument. You're not relaying anything that can be better understood through a graph or a chart. So I don't think it's necessary. The next step would be identifying your audience. Now, for NTP staff, your audience is usually Ministry of Health, donors, but sometimes your audience is the actual public, right? Sometimes you have to put out messages to the public. So you have to know who your audience is. Is your audience adolescents? Because the way you convey your message is going to be very different than if your audience is grandma and grandpa. Okay, so how much does your audience know about the topic? How much are they able to analyze data? All those things as represented. Can they do that? Can they look at data and do that analysis that you and I can do? Do they understand the type of graph or chart you're using? And what language do they already know? What information is already available to them? Then the third step is figuring out how you want to show the information to your audience. So if you are comparing values, you usually use a bar or column chart. Those are the most common ones in the TB world. We use a lot of bar charts. If you're looking at how data is correlated, heat map is really good for that. Bubble chart, scatter plot. Showing trends, we use a lot of line charts. Demonstrating parts to a whole, that's when you use the pie chart, of course, if it adds up to 100, or a stacked bar chart. Distribution, box chart, density plot, lots and lots of different ways. So this is just showing you an example of how many choices. If you're comparing data, you have so many choices, but they're not always well understood. So for example, people might not understand this, we could also call it a spider chart as well. Sometimes people need kind of training on how to understand some of these. These are how things are correlated, how they relate to each other. This is parts to a whole. We usually use pie charts. That's the most common one, but there are lots of other ones. But again, some of these are very technical. Like I'm sure we've all seen these in like medical journals or something, but the general public wouldn't necessarily know them. Data over time and distribution. So again, you think of your audience. What do they already know? What do they already understand? What is the best way to tell my data story? So, which chart looks better to you? Which one do you think, if you were presenting 3 types of data, the proportions are all the same, by the way, in all 3 examples. Which looks better to you? Say it again. The second one, why? Can you explain why did you answered immediately? So you decided within a second that the middle one looked better. It looks better to me too. Why?
Because if we are talking about the data, not percentage or proportionality, it means just to have a look in the different columns with some data visualization, because in the inside of these columns, it can be also mentioned data. No?
I think that even without putting any numbers in the elements of those charts, we understand from the second one which one is bigger, which one is smaller. So it doesn't matter if there are percentages or numbers or whatever. It is quite visualized and simply understandable.
You're absolutely right.
Can I add
Yeah.
something? It depends if in the second one it's independent meanings. For example, different countries, the same indicator for different countries. It is good. But pie chart, if it is proportion of within one country, for example.
So you're saying it depends what data you're presenting,
Yeah,
or what your
depends.
indicator is. Yeah. So oh yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm not right, but I think the other two chart is showing something process also, but the second one is there is no processing, which is linked each other. It means they haven't impact on these figures.
Yeah, thank you for that. The human brain can process that information, bar charts, better than we can process parts to a whole. The human brain also, when we look at this, our eyes automatically land on the top of the bar chart. We don't even know that this is happening, and it happens within a fraction of a second. But when we look at a graph, our eyes immediately go to the tips of the bar chart. And when they go to the tips of the bar chart, they're able to immediately process which one is the tallest, which one is the shortest. And that takes a little bit more time when looking at a pie graph or a stacked bar column. So it's also the way that our brains work. So which chart makes it easier to judge the difference between B and C? The second one again. Yeah, and again, it's because of the way that our brains process the information. So some visualizations, again, like I mentioned before, they require special knowledge of the type of graph or chart. Some are misleading. So you always have to think about who is your audience. Not everybody is going to understand how to read this. And I think we've all experienced that, even though we are familiar with charts and graphs. I think we've all seen something and don't even understand what the information is trying to convey. So oftentimes it's because they used the wrong graphic. So best practices. These are the don'ts. Do not. So avoid using too many variables within a single image, because again, it can be a little distracting. Don't visualize data with the wrong format. So again, where I showed before, and you said the column was easier to read than the stacked bar column, the graph like that, it's because that was sort of the correct chart. When you're using scales, don't use inconsistent scales. So keep your scales consistent. Almost always you start at 0. You don't start at 200,000 or something. Don't neglect your choice of colors. Colors are really important. People love using colors in graphics, but you have to use them with intention. Avoid using colors with minimal contrast. Many people, if they print things, it's printed in black and white. So if you don't have enough contrast, you're not going to be able to read that visualization. Also, for people who are colorblind, you have to think about that and what they may or may not be able to perceive. Avoid using too many colors because, again, it gets distracting. And make sure that when you're using colors, there's a reason you're using the colors, not just because you want it to look colorful or you want to be fancy. Now, the do's. So the point, again, of a data visualization is to tell a story. So these examples I picked out because I think they're really nice. There's a woman named Marian Lutenberger who does these really cool data visualizations for an organization in Austria that works with people who have drug addiction. And this graph is showing the number of people they served in their syringe exchange program. So you see, this is a syringe here. And this is the number of people they served and the year. But it's clever, it's creative, and it's easy to understand. Same with this graph from the Global Fund, showing their total allocations, I guess, looking at HIV, TB, and malaria. Do you notice how it's not in color? It's in gray because it doesn't really have to be in color. Having it in color doesn't necessarily make it easier to understand. They use the appropriate graphic. It tells a story. Immediately you can see which program is the most funded, which is the least funded. It's simple. So you don't have to be fancy to tell an immediate story. Make your data visualization clear and easy to understand. This is not a clear visualization. This is showing the average monthly temperatures in 3 cities: Minneapolis, Phoenix, and Raleigh. There are too many data points. It's kind of cluttered. It's kind of messy. But look at how much easier that is to read. Same data. You didn't change the data at all. Just presented it in a nicer way. Choose the right chart type. What is wrong with this one? What's wrong with the pie chart? Yeah, it doesn't add up to 100. Don't use a pie chart if it's not going to add to 100. The bar graph is much easier. By the way, it's showing pet ownership by grade of the child. That's what this is showing. Yeah, by parent. Follow convention. So when you're using columns or bar charts or anything, sometimes it's okay to not start at 0, but almost always start at 0. This is the same information. But do you see how different the data looks? Here it starts on the right, it starts at 0. Here it doesn't, which is kind of misleading. It's not a very honest graph. So the best practice is start at 0. Number 5, make sure your scale is consistent and honest. This is the same data. All 3 of these are showing the same data. But do you see how they kind of manipulated the data by manipulating the visualization? So again, you have to be honest. It's the same data, 3 different scales. Label your visualizations. Do you know what this one is showing? I don't either. I have no idea. There's no label. There's no title. There's no legend. I don't know. It could be anything. Number of Netflix subscribers. I have no idea. So make sure you label things. See how over here it's looking at historical life expectancy with 3 countries. It has a nice title. It has a legend. The X and Y axis are labeled very nicely. Make smart color choices. So here It's looking at CO2 emissions by country. Each of these is a different country, but you wouldn't necessarily know it because in this case, they're all the same color. So this is an instance where color is a good thing because you're using color to show these are distinct data points. Okay, so in this case, I would not have it monochromatic. I would actually use color. But again, color is not always necessary. Only use it when it's serving a purpose. And again, like in the previous example, use colors when they correspond to a difference in data. So think, what purpose is the color going to serve, and will it serve the purpose effectively? Will it make my visualization better? Not just more colorful, actually better. So use colors and scales that make sense. This is not good. This is looking at, this map is a map of the United States looking at COVID cases by state. Okay. This is a CDC one, so the CDC should know better. We've been trained that lighter color means smaller number, right? And darker color means higher number. In your heat map, Natalia, you followed convention. That's what people understand. In this case, the lighter color means more COVID cases, and the darker color means fewer reported cases, and the rest of the colors don't even make sense. So this one is not good. This one, looking at population density in the UK, where again, you can immediately see, okay, lighter color, less population, darker color, more people. It's all in the same shade of blue. That makes sense. Just like Natalia's map, she used different shades of red and pink. That makes sense. Have a good reason to use three-dimensional charts. And fun fact, there's almost never a good reason to use 3D charts. So in this case, the visual on the right, in that case, that's appropriate, but that is also depicting pretty complex data. And again, the person has to have some training or knowledge on how to read that type of data. But this one, it's actually better if you don't have it be 3D, because again, you want people's brains to process the information as quickly as possible. That's why you're doing a graphic instead of having the text. So this just makes them take more time. Number 9, okay, watch your data to ink ratio. What that means is just don't put extra stuff, okay? These charts are showing how many calories different foods have per 100 grams. And you have French fries, potato chips, bacon, pizza, and like a hot dog. And they wanted to highlight bacon. So do you see? Okay, one second, let me do this. Okay, so here, this is what was created in, automatically created on the computer. And in Excel, you can keep removing variables. Okay, I think we all know how to do that in the charts. You can add or remove variables. So here, they remove the background and they remove the legend. You don't need the legend. You already have it, the type of food here. This is redundant. Okay, they took that away, fine. You also see how they summarize the title too. Then here, they took away the different colors because we only want to highlight bacon, okay? So we're getting a little bit better. And here is the most simplified. They took out the lines. Here they even took out the calories and just put the numbers directly on the bar chart. So it's just showing how this might be what Excel gives you, but you don't have to go with it. You can tailor it so it looks as simplified and as clear as you want. And then Lastly, pay attention to how your text is oriented. So look at this one. This is looking at, these are different adverse reactions to DRTB treatment by the type of reaction. Pretty hard to read because we don't read like that. Okay, this one is better. Do you see how much better that one on the right is compared to this one on the left? They just flip the X and Y axis. Now it's much easier to read. So again, a very simple fix. Nobody needs any special training or software to do this. You just have to sort of, it's kind of common sense, right? So improving visualizations. In Canada, they did a survey and asked which prominent Canadian woman should be featured on their $20 bill. And these were the responses. And this is the visualization that was created, which is not very good. How would you improve this visualization? You still want to present the data, but this is pretty messy, right? We have a hard time. I don't even, that's really hard to understand. How would you improve this? Does anyone have an idea? Oh, Maka, go ahead.
I would put a kind of threshold and leave only those who are above this threshold.
Excellent idea. And call it other. Yeah. Anyone else? And that's what they did. So I think it works better with this type of visual. And then the other that is less than 1.2%, just put in the other category. Yeah, I agree. Okay, same here. This is again showing how this is the same data, but do you see by putting it in a bar chart, it improves the understanding of the data because again, our eyes are able to process bar charts easier. If you're showing, if it all adds up to 100%, okay, maybe you would want to put it in a pie chart, but still, when you look at the pie chart, it looks like they're all, to me, it looks like they're all the same quantity. I don't recognize that these are actually different numbers. This is bad. It's looking at sales by state. Okay, how many states are there in the United States? 50. There are 50 data points here. That's crazy. Do you have a suggestion how to improve this? You can't read it, so you don't even know where to start. Okay, maybe for wall art, maybe for art in your office. Yeah. This one could benefit from small multiples. So this one, now you can understand the data by using small multiples. Okay, so to recap, when you're doing data visualizations, you have to create a concise narrative that immediately gives somebody information. It tells a story, it gives information. That population pyramid of Armenia, as soon as I saw that population pyramid, I could see that Armenia has a high life expectancy. I could see that Armenia has fairly low fertility. I could see that Armenia doesn't have that much variation between males and females until you get to a certain age, and then there are a lot more females. You can see that within 4 seconds. It's a really beautiful visualization. So you have to be able to tell a story, or all of those other visualizations that are in the PBMEF that Ezra was showing with each indicator reference sheet. Those immediately can tell a story. Make your message clear and understandable, to the audience that you are presenting it to. Sometimes remember, your data is used for advocacy. And so you want it to be powerful, and you want to use also use the right chart or the right visualization to really let your data in your analysis shine. Follow convention, meaning starting your scales at 0. Many times too, we see green is usually associated with something that's good, or like go ahead. Red is usually associated with things that are like stop or not good. So don't use red if it's supposed to be something good, and green if it's supposed to be something bad, for example. That's just not how we understand things. Ensure that your scale is consistent and honest. Don't use data visualizations to manipulate or mislead people with your data. Use labels, label your chart correctly, or label your variables correctly. Make smart color choices, and sometimes that means not using color at all. Have a good reason to use a 3D chart, and in the TB world, there are not that many good reasons to use a 3D chart. Watch your data to ink ratio, and then pay attention to how the text is oriented so people don't have to crane their necks to read your graph. These are different links to resources for data visualizations. The TB DIAH website has the Data Hub and the Data Explorer, so you can plug in different indicators, and you can plug in the indicator and the country or countries if you want to do a cross-country comparison, and it'll generate a visualization for you right there. So that is really nice. And then that's it. Does anyone have any comments or questions? While you're thinking, when between now and when you do this training, when you start training your colleagues in your countries, I encourage you to keep an eye out when you're looking at the news or when you're looking at reports. And if you see a really good visualization, bookmark it, keep it. Or if you see an example of a visualization that's not good, bookmark it, because it's always good to show examples from your own country and your own work. And you might already have some in mind, some of your favorites, good or bad. So yeah, I encourage you to just kind of keep your eyes open now when you're looking at infographics and visualizations, because those will be good examples when you do the training yourselves and tailor the presentations to your countries.